Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to the episode 8 of ARINGO's Coffee Chat series. I am Priyanka, and today we are joined by with ARINGO CEO Jenifer. And today we are going to discuss a topic that is very close to Jen's heart. It is MBA Networking Strategy. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Priyanka. I'm super excited.
Yay. So, Jen, we talk a lot about GMAT scores, MBA essays, etc., other parts of the application, but there's a massive component in the process that's just happening off paper. So, we see a lot of candidates every year. So, there's some candidates who think this that MBA networking is something like just check in the box kind of thing, while there are also other candidates who are terrified to bother AdComs or alumni or students. So we see both type of candidates everywhere. So I want to, can you help us make understand that why MBA networking is a very high stake strategic move rather than just a social one thing to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Priyanka, I I think that again, Priyanka's going to keep me on track because again, I can really talk about this all day. But it's really important to network, and it's not. It is important for the application process, but it's also important for you. This is the point where you can make sure that this is the right fit for you. You can kind of like boots on the ground is like one of the terms we use here in the US. And so you get to talk to somebody who's in it right now, and they can tell you what is, kind of going on, what the recruitment is like, what the environment is like. And so, this is your moment to get that inside information and to also like determine if it's the right fit for you and what you're wanting to do in life and like beyond the MBA, and if it's a good fit for you like during the MBA. So a couple of things. The school will tell you what they feel like the highlights are, but you may be from a specific area or you may be looking for a certain type of community. And so you may just want to say, like, okay, like we have a lot of candidates that are from India. So, like, I'm coming from India. Like, what is it like there coming from India? Like, one of the schools I used to work at, like we had an amazing Indian student association that would pick you up from the airport, that would show you all the grocery stores, like where the community is. And so you could have like a taste of home while you're, doing the, while you're um, in school. And I guess like I don't want you to get too caught up on that, but I also want you to know that there are resources there. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that you're going to get kind of this internal referral kind of factor where they may be able to put a note in your file or recommend you potentially, like if you build a nice relationship with somebody. And then you also want to be able to kind of start working your sorry, I'm also admitting people into the room. So also, like, you want to be able to tell people your story as to why you want to be there, and they're going to help you with building this narrative for the admissions committee. And so you're going to get those key elements that you're looking for. And again, like, this is your moment to test, like, is this the right school for me? Some schools are collaborative, some schools are competitive. You want to know, like, is this the right place for me? And also like the hiring, right? Like, again, like this is a really long-term investment between the years that you spend on campus in the school, what your outcomes are like for employment. So it's a really big decision, and you can have even more information to help you with not only making decision, but getting ready with your application.
That's I mean, you have listed so many benefits of doing it. So why this is important, that is clearly visible. And I think that makes a student just a candidate or just one other application to an actual human being that the community wants to welcome in. They want to have them in their cohort. So I guess that's where the the candidate difference will lie when they start to network.
Yeah.
Uh, before I move ahead, I want to tell everybody who have joined us today. if you have any questions related to this, or you have any questions beforehand about this topic, etc., please keep writing them down in the chat box here, and we'll take all of them towards the end of the session. All right. Thank you. Uh, so, Jennifer, in the last session, we talked about the August panic. We were talking about the timelines and everything. So, when is the sweet spot to start the networking thing? When is the right time to start the networking part of the
Yeah.
application?
And this is something that maybe isn't even on your radar as an applicant because you're not in it. But students are going to be leaving campus around May, June to go to their internships or graduation. So right now is the right time. So you want to reach out to them and be able to make those connections before they leave campus, because once they leave campus, and like maybe they're doing an internship at an MBB consulting firm and like it's intense and they're like, I'm not even going to check my school email, right? So, I would say right now is the best time to really kind of reach out and start making those connections. And then, so again, like that's up until like May-ish, maybe June. And then June through August, this is again like a little bit of a harder time for you to be able to, really make those connections, but you absolutely still can. It just might take a little bit more time. So don't be impatient. And then like I think that we had quite a few people mention that they were like afraid of looking desperate. I think looking desperate is when it's happening like in August and September, like, oh, last minute I thought like, oh, I should talk to a student about this school that's thousands of miles away from me. And like I just want to, talk to somebody before I submit my application tomorrow. So that's kind of like my thought on the timeline. So put in the work now before the applications are even published.
So yes, now is the time to start if you are looking for applying to the Fall 27 applications. So Jen, so now is the time, as you said, how is how should the candidate initiate this conversation? Is LinkedIn the only way the person should approach?
I feel like LinkedIn should be kind of your last avenue for connecting with
Okay.
students because it is it's the least personal, right? Like you're just searching, and some people are very good at doing searches on LinkedIn to find people. But you're not making this connection. So first, I would say that you want to look at the school website. The schools, I think like every school, like I will say 99% sure that every school has ambassadors of some sort. And these are students that volunteered and said like, hey, I want to help the next class come in. And I want to volunteer my experience and share with them so that, we can have, future candidates that I feel like are great and that they get to know, the insider information. So the ambassadors are absolutely like the first place that you can go to really check to find somebody, right? Easy. They are kind of, it's their job, so to say. So that's easy. Then I would say you want to move into professional clubs. And so I will share this real quick. If we look at Columbia, they have all of their student clubs organized here, and it goes kind of by, sorry about that. So it kind of goes by different categories, right? So you have different types of affinity clubs, athletic clubs, community service. The first place that I would be looking at is going to be the professional career clubs, right? Because this is your direct connect to what you're wanting to study and what you're wanting to do after you graduate. And this is like the best research that you can get. So some of these programs, like if you click here, like click on the actual thing, they will have, like here's our club and upcoming events and connections. So sometimes they may or may not have a connection here or an email address that you can reach out. In the top right hand, there is like a connect with us. So they do have an email address. And so you can email this email and say, hey, I'm really interested in aerospace and defense. I have a background in aeronautical engineering, and I wanted to, get to know what it's like to study at Columbia and what resources there are. And so you're kind of going in with like we call it like a warm lead, right? Like, I have this connection to you. Can you share your experience? And that's absolutely what they want to do. So these conversations, the emails, everything, while it is important for them to get the connection to who you are, let them do the talking during this conversation, because that's, the most important. The other thing that I'll share, I think that you guys can all see this now, is that schools have events that are hosted specifically for you to make a connection. So there's, that typical like AdCom, like informational webinar that you can, join in. But I would say that you want to, maybe do one of those, and they can even be in the background, right? But you want to look at these like student-led webinars. And so sometimes, especially virtually, they will allow as many people as they want. Sometimes they don't, though. And you need to get on a wait list, or you have to find a next event. So this is a good place to look this up, to be like, okay, great, I can connect with people here. So, Priyanka, those are like a few of the areas where they can look. As far as anything else, you can also look up who you graduated with that maybe is at the school, your batchmates, your alumni system. Look through and see if somebody is either in the program or recently graduated. And even if you didn't know them personally, you now have that school connection to say like, oh, I also went to SP Jane and I want, to find out what it's like at Wharton, and can you share? And that gives them just this little bit of connection to say like, yeah, I'll answer you back, instead of saying like, oh, I get hundreds of pings on LinkedIn to connect and talk about the program, but yours is personal. And I feel like I'm going to get something out of this. Sorry,
So
that was
yes,
a lot.
I think so yes, they are just not LinkedIn. There are multiple ways, a multi-channel approach that a person can take to connect to AdComs and students and alumni. Uh, can you give more detail about, let's say, Jen, the candidate got in touch with an AdCom, or with any other person from the system, and they schedule a Zoom call, 15-20 minute long Zoom call. What should they talk about? How should they start the conversation? Can you just give us an idea of that as
Yeah.
well?
So think back to, look at what the application questions are, right? So, Wharton, one of their typical questions is, how will you contribute to the Wharton community? And most schools have some sort of question like that. And they will, sorry. So if you think of those questions, think about that's kind of leading into what questions you want to ask this person is, tell me more about the culture. Tell me a little bit more about your experience. Is it collaborative? Where do I have the ability to kind of volunteer and do things? But like I said earlier, you really want them to lead the conversation and talk the whole time, because really this is gold, right? For like your materials. And you don't get this opportunity that often. So definitely allow them to kind of talk freely, and don't interrupt them, or, try to get out like 73 questions in this 20-minute conversation. You want to get this inside information. You want to be able to connect it to the classwork, coursework, anything else that you feel like you may need to get to learn about as far as the curriculum or the environment or culture. And then I guess then you can ask them at the very end. You can say after we've kind of spoken and you got to know me a little bit better, is there anybody else you think I should speak with before I submit my application or something like that? And so That's where you get this kind of like refer, like again, like another warm lead of like, oh, hey, yeah, I think that you should talk to so and so because you really like to do community events and this person organizes them, blah, blah, blah. So, they're going to look to start to connect you with other people as well. And you're building your network within that.
That's amazing. I mean, if the person gets admitted, also he would already know, a bunch of people, and it's great for the applications as well. Uh, Jennifer, so a candidate applies to multiple school, in particular application cycle, and let's say applying to 5 schools. For every school, he would maybe talking to 2, 3 people. Maybe some AdComs, somewhere current students, somewhere more than 2 current students. It can be many things. So it's difficult to remember, I think, for anybody to keep a track of whom he has talked to and what they have, what information they have given, etc. So is there a suggestion, is there a way that you can help us to how the candidates can organize all these communication in a way that eventually it helps them in their application essays and interviews that they do further?
Yeah. So I created this very basic, simple kind of tracker to help candidates with, tracking these conversations. It's a tracker. So you're going to track with it. And I mean, like, if you want, I can always email it to you. This is very basic, but I would say, like, I would kind of keep a list of like all the schools that you're interested in, their deadlines, etc., and organize that as like your first tab. And then the example for like Wharton, right? Like, so on November 11th, I went to the Louder info session and I was able to learn a couple of things. Like, there's only like, specific rounds that you can apply to, who was running that session, and anything else is like, as far as like communication, I would say, like, like for another like coffee chat, you could set up a LinkedIn request and send them a message and say like, oh, thanks so much for chatting with me. Like, you can kind of keep this information here. And then once you go to write your application, you're going to be able to reflect on what, okay, this is what I learned from, this person. I used to have a Darden example, but with Darden, it's like one of the notes is that like, that they like to call the campus the grounds, right? Like, so any of that little insider information, or when you talk to somebody from Stanford and they're talking about being able to study outside of the business school, they call it ATS, across the street, because across the street from the business school is the rest of the campus. And so if you can kind of incorporate that, like, hey, like, I've actually talked to people and got insider information, then it's more convincing for the AdCom that you do want to go to this school and it's authentic that they're your number one choice, not just because of their ranking or not just because of a brand name, but because of X, Y, and Z. And that's what you're building here in these conversations.
That's a great Excel. That is way great tip, Jen. Thank you. So Jen, as we talked about that, candidates reach out to different people for the applications. Do their questions also differ with the people they are talking to? I mean, what kind of question should they have for, say, AdCom, for current students, what alumni, etc.? So can you help us with that as well?
Yeah. So I would say that, like, most of your questions that you would ask an AdCom person are going to be answered in those generic info sessions. And you can add questions into the chat box for their, presentation or things like that. But again, like, I would focus most of my efforts on speaking to a current student or a recent alum. They're, again, going to be able to tell you what is happening this recruitment cycle for internships and full-time jobs. So when you talk to a student, you want to ask them, about the culture and the fit, or, what surprised you when you got on campus, or like, what were you not prepared for, or any advice, right? For somebody that's, a year out from this process, what would you tell yourself back then? And then you can also talk to them about, like, if you've shared a little bit about who you are and what you're really interested in, then you can ask them for suggestions of like, hey, like, I'm still doing my research. Is there anything you recommend that I look into, or somebody I should speak with, like we kind of talked about earlier? And then you can also, ask them some real questions that maybe you could be afraid of, like, how hard is it to like balance your classes with, with the social stuff and recruitment and all that kind of stuff. So you can ask them those personal questions and get their insight and advice. And I think that that's really helpful. As far as the speaking with an AdCom member, again, like those are kind of generic, so to say. Like it's really hard because they're going to give you a lot of that stuff, like information. But you could ask them about like the current experiences, like if they launched a new series. I mean, every school's launched something new with AI, so you can always say like, oh, I saw that you launched this last year. What is the student response? How are people really liking that? Or you can talk to them about I've been able to speak with a couple of people from different clubs, but I never found a club that fit aerospace defense, right? Like, so you come up with, or well, not come up with, but you say what's missing and say like, oh, like, do people really create clubs? Like, what's that process look like? But you can ask them some of those off questions to kind of go there. But as far as the other category that we haven't talked about a lot is alumni. So you want to kind of ask them about what has the school kind of done for you? What kind of doors have they opened? How has it helped you since you've graduated? How have you been connected since then? And then again, like you can always, ask them like what advice they have, or, what was the most impactful class or professor, and those types of things. And then, wherever they've moved to, like, have you been able to find other alum to kind of, connect with and continue the camaraderie of the cohort and being on campus and kind of keep that spirit alive. Yeah, so I think that's everything as far as those conversations. But if you have questions, definitely put them in the chat.
Yeah. So then these are the questions that you mentioned. Are there also any questions that a candidate should not ask, like deal breaker questions?
Yeah, so these are current students. You do not want them to read your essays. You like don't ask them that. Don't put that on them to ask them to read your essays and to give you feedback, because if you don't get admitted or something like that, like they never want to feel liable for it. And I would never ask somebody to feel that way. You could get some advice or some pointers or something like that, but like I wouldn't ask them to read your essay on your first call and say like, hey, can I send you my first draft? They may offer it. If they offer it, then great. But I wouldn't ask them to do it just because I feel like it's kind of crossing a line of like what you're expecting from this connection. So anyways, I think like the other part is that you want to come prepared to any of these, conversations. You don't want to just like show up and be like, hey, tell me about your experience, right? Like, so you want to come with an agenda that you want to get some questions answered, let them lead, but, make sure that you have things to help the conversation continue on. And then you always want to be on time. Obviously, like they have jam-packed schedules, they're doing all kinds of things. Because they're on a quarter system, they have like finals every quarter. So it's a lot that they have going on. So just make sure that you're always prompt and on time and, not wasting their time because it's precious.
That's true. And these are some very important questions that you have mentioned that, yes, what not to talk and what to talk, both are equally important, and person should remember when approaching, when starting the networking thing. Okay. So we are at the, question and answer time now. And, people, we have some questions already, and, you can also keep writing your questions and let us know, and we will try our best to answer. So Jane, we have first question from Smriti Banka. Hi, Smriti. She's asking, when's the ideal time to start reaching out to people?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and put up my contact information for people who want to do to ask questions that they're not ready to ask in front of us, or that they forgot or whatever. So just take a screenshot of this, and we can always kind of chat later, or you can set up a meeting for us to chat as well on the QR code. So as far as the timeline, I would say that you want to again, like right now is the best time because the students are still, actively on campus. So now until June is like the time you want to do this research. As the summer goes on, it gets a little bit harder. And then as we get closer to the deadlines, I think it gets harder and harder to actually incorporate what you've learned into something you've already written.
Thanks, Jay. We have another question, not a question, more of a request from Daniel. He's asking that, can I please get this tracker emailed to me?
Yeah,
So I need to
absolutely.
give you the email ID. We have your email ID. So Jen, post the email, please. I think everybody would want to have that tracker. It's super easy to organize the conversation, and people can focus on the conversation instead of managing it.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this is very low tech. This is me. I'm not a engineer and LLM, like any of that kind of stuff. So if you have a better version, I am I'm very open to any improvements from my low tech version. I just want to keep the basics in there to make sure you're getting what you need. So
All right. Next question we have from Dylan. Hi, Dylan. So he's saying, I'm targeting the fall 2027 cycle and I'm still studying for the GMAT, aiming to sit for the exam sometime in May or June. I understand the value of networking this spring, but I'm concerned that reaching out to current students or alumni without an official GMAT score makes me just look like a hypothetical candidate. So, do you recommend holding off an active one on one outreach until my score is secured, so I'm taken more seriously? Or is there a specific way to frame these early conversations? Very amazing, very nice questions that you have, Dylan, here.
okay, so one, I don't think that like anybody is going to ask you if you've taken your GMAT or GRE yet. So I don't think that that's even part of the conversation. It might be just part of your own mental perception of like, oh gosh, I'm not even like it, I'm not worthy of this call yet. I haven't earned my place with my GMAT score. So you don't need to worry too much about like what the other person's going to say. They're not going to ask, but they were in your shoes like just a year ago or 2 years, depending on which year they are. And so they're never going to be critical because they had to go through the same thing you're doing, trying to take the exam, balance work, do the networking, learn about the schools, and do all the things. So I wouldn't be worried about them not validating your spot. What I would say is that maybe not reach out to like Harvard, Stanford, like those types of schools until you have at least, a somewhat admissible score. Maybe that's the thing, is that you look at your school list of um, on a kind of like a continuum. You have some schools that are going to be a reach, some schools that are a target, and some schools that are going to be safety. And it's great to go ahead and start reaching out to the safety and the target. And then the aspirational, maybe just wait to see where your score is starting to land and then go from there. So another thing that you could do is, let's say that like Wharton, they're hosting a coffee chat next week, but you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get to that score. But you can, you can write down the name, reach out to them in LinkedIn and say, hey, like, I really enjoyed the coffee chat. Thanks so much. I hope to be able to reach out to you later as I have more questions. And so you've already kind of like warmed them up to being open to, communicating with you even during their busy season. So that's kind of like an easier way of like, you got a little bit of work in there, but you didn't do things so preemptively that you're like, gosh, I wasted all my time chatting with all these people from this school and I'm not even going to apply there.
Thank you, Jane. I hope that answers your question, Dylan. Next question. Next question we have from Srinivas Reddy. Hi, Srinivas. Hi, can we go over this again? How to reach out to current students and alumni? And is there a pitching line or something that I can use? And what kind of questions would be helpful for my admissions?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll send out a link to this recording too. But essentially, what you want to do is look for some sort of connection, look at the student clubs and organizations on campus, find something that is, important to you, stands out to you. Usually, the career part is like the career clubs, like the finance club, the tech club, consulting club. All of those are pretty basic and, definitely like available at almost every single school. So trying to reach out to people from those clubs and say like, hey, like I'm interested in attending Columbia and then, going into consulting. I want to hear a little bit more about your experience and, find out how recruitment is going this season. And so that could be a great opener. First is again, like I'm making a connection as to why I am a relevant person to speak to. And I've done my research already to get connected in a way of like, I found a way to make a connection with you versus I'm just blindly trying to find people on LinkedIn. I think that that's usually the best. You can also look for ambassadors, look for people from your batch that maybe either attended or are in school now at those schools. They can help you as well.
Okay, thanks, Jen. I think that helps the question. Srinivas, if you have more questions related to this, you can always schedule a chat with Jenifer and she can guide you how you can do these conversations and take them ahead. Uh, Next question we have from Harshal. Hi, Harshal. Is there any way to reach out to current students or alums apart from LinkedIn? And also, are there some ideal questions that should be part of the conversation and some questions that shouldn't be asked at all?
Yeah, so I think we covered a little bit of this before, but I would say beyond LinkedIn, we can, look at the student clubs, the ambassadors. If you don't have an email address, you could ask, like, if you have a connection with somebody, and say, like, oh, like I also saw that Jane Doe is also part of this club. Do you mind connecting me with her? So you can kind of do it that way. But like those are, I think like we kind of went through this, but if you can use those kind of resources to get there to not have to do LinkedIn. But like if you do, then do something to kind of pitch yourself as like, I have a connection with you. And again, like things that you don't want to ask off the bat is, will you read my application? Will you put in an endorsement for me as a student? Some schools do that. And I would say that you can ask for an endorsement after you've built a relationship. And I don't even know if I would ask for it, but like it's something that could be offered, right? Or if you get on the wait list, that's when I say you ask for the endorsement. That's like something to navigate. But yeah, I think that answered your question, Harshal. Not sure if you have anything else.
All right, I think you have covered the points. Next, we have from Anna. Hi, Anna. So she's saying that I'm in a similar boat as Dylan, and I'm planning to take my GMAT May 1st. So I'm spending all my free time studying, and I wasn't planning to reach out to anyone for networking until after I was done. So I could focus just on GMAT for now. Do you recommend reaching out ASAP, like on May 2nd? Like first when she's planning to take the score GMAT, so that's her idea. And or do you think should wait until after the school's finals are over?
I would say like reach out as soon as you feel comfortable. Uh, there is some work into this, right? You've got to do the research to figure out how to connect with them. So there's some ins and outs to it. It's not something like as easy as like going on LinkedIn and just copying and pasting the same thing into several different connection requests. So I would say, maybe set aside one day to do this research and to make these connections, put them in your spreadsheet. And as they come in, you can continue to add the information with these conversations. I would say, like, if you feel like I just really can't and it's going to overwhelm you, then don't. Like, I think that that's okay too. There will still be students that are going to answer questions, that are going to go to the coffee chats, especially, again, ambassadors. That's kind of one of their roles as a student ambassador. So they should be answering, or like, if we get to the summer and you can't get anybody, let me know. And I can give you some other tactics of like maybe reaching out to the AdCom and saying like, hey, I haven't been able to reach out with or reach anyone to speak with. Do you have any recommendations or someone I should reach out to specifically that maybe is around this summer that I can connect with?
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Next, we have from Vivian. So, would we be able to access this recording or transcript later? So,
Yeah.
yes, Vivian, you will be. We will share the recording of this entire session, and you can take notes accordingly and do your networking in the way. We also have other questions, Jennifer, that a few candidates asked, emailed me as well. So, one of the questions were that is there an ideal number of people one should network with per school? So, can you help me with that number? Is there any ideal number that person should think about?
Yeah. So I would say reach out to 5 people, right? Like I would say you reach out to 5 people. If you get to speak with 2 or 3, fantastic. Like really all you need is one, really, to like kind of start baking things into your application and essays. You just need one really to kind of help with that. But I wouldn't try to reach out to 15 of them. Again, at one of the schools I worked at before, we had like a button on our website that said like speak to this ambassador, and they clicked on every single one of them and sent 15 requests to like 15 different ambassadors. And so that blanket effect, it actually it went to the AdCom, and it didn't go directly to the students because they try to act like as a filter. And so now the AdCom just saw you ask all 15 ambassadors to spend time speaking with you personally. And while there is some value in it, maybe, or some initiative, I still think it doesn't give like the best impression. Again, like I would try to reach out to 5. If those 2 or 3 reply and you get a connection and you get to get some information that's helpful for you to say like, yep, this is the right school for me. I know that maybe consulting recruitment is tough this season, and some alternatives that people are looking at is product or tech or whatever it might be. Then you've got that to fold into your actual essays and say like, okay, like after speaking with so and so, I found out that well, maybe this isn't like the exact wording I would use, but essentially you can say like, I know that consulting has ebbs and flows, and my backup plan is that I would recruit for X, Y, and Z if consulting was down. So, like you want to figure out a way to put it in there. But I would say start with 5 for school and then move on.
That's awesome. And the kind of information that you gave about, 15 ambassadors and the school is there's a filter in between. That's the kind of inside information I think the candidates are looking for because, of course, we would not know, at the other side of the line that what's happening behind the curtain.
Yeah. And I think like
Uh,
there's like if somebody's pinging everybody, there's like going to be some chats like between the ambassadors. They probably have a WhatsApp chat and kind of like,
mhm.
oh, I got all these requests or something like that from one person or something like that. But yeah, they'll talk.
True. Another question that we got that so let's say people reach out to somebody from through LinkedIn. Okay, the person did not reply. Okay, the AdCom, the student, they did not reply. Is it okay to follow up once, or the person should leave it there? You know, they want to understand. Just following up makes them look desperate or something. I mean, so that's the question.
I think that the biggest thing again is to make sure that you're making the most impact in that initial connect,
Okay.
and go back and look at that whatever request you sent, email or LinkedIn, whatever it might be, and make sure that there was something that was a hook. If it wasn't, then you have the ability to refine that and say like, oh, I know things are busy. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about X, Y, and Z. I would love to speak with you, but if you don't have time, here's the questions I was really looking to get from you. So that's kind of like the alternative way. Like, yes, they're not necessarily like a voice to voice or, even like a web chat, but you can still get the answers from them via email. And I think like that's still better than nothing.
Okay, I think that helps. Another question that I have for you, Jane, is that the candidate has asked that uh, what is the extent he or she should talk about his goals or or she should not talk about the goals and more about how to get into the school, or maybe, talk about the environment, cohort, and other things. So should they talk about their goals and everything, or not at all?
I think you want to do it in shorthand, right? Like, I have a background in finance and I'm looking to pivot into tech, and I want to hear about your experience. So, very short introduction. And then from there, I think that they can ask you additional questions to be able to get the conversation going if they feel like they need more context.
Okay. Candice would also like to know, Jenifer, that, they have taken the information, they've taken, have talked to everyone they could from the networking point. Now, this cold information that they have, how should they actually use in the essay? Are there some tips around it as well? Where to use, how to use, etc.?
Yeah, there's again, like if we go back to Wharton, one of their questions is how will you contribute to the Wharton community? And again, like there's several different ones that ask a very similar question. And with that being said, like you can use like in speaking with student name, I learned about this event or this activity, and I feel like, that's a great fit for me. And you want to reference that you've done your research. It's not name dropping, it is research and validation. So it's not just like, oh, in speaking with students I learned about this. Like you actually talked to somebody or made a connection. I'll say that there's also a little bit of like a psychological side of this as to if you mention somebody with a similar career path and they've been successful, then the reviewer will also be able to say like, oh yeah, I think that they can be successful too. And it might not be the initial reader, right? Like the first person to read your application might not know anybody else on campus, but when it gets to like the AdCom review, to the sitting at the table and making decisions, it can give you a little bit of edge to say like, I've made these connections, I'm already embedded in the fabric, or well, I guess you're not at that level yet, but still, like I know what I'm looking at and why I want to be here.
Yeah, you never know what turns into that, just an application to that admission offer. So maybe this is a thing
Yeah.
that might do the magic.
Yeah. And so this is like a funny story. A couple of years ago, I had a client who was just like, I want to be at Cornell. Like Cornell just is the right place for me because he had networked and made these strong connections. He had a lower GMAT score, and we knew when he applied like that was going to be a concern. We did everything we could to kind of mitigate that in the application itself, but he got waitlisted. And then when he shared his waitlist with the connections he had made at Cornell, like they went to bat for him. They were like, he absolutely needs to be here on campus. And he literally had like 11 people that contacted the admissions committee and were like, no, like he has to be here. And I mean, that's an exception to the rule, but I've seen that it has power in helping you with your application. And I'm not saying that you should try to get that to happen initially or anything like that. But from this networking, you can create deep relationships that will continue on because you'll make this connection today. Then you get on campus, you get the interview, you can say like, thanks so much for your help and sharing more about this. I actually got my interview and, would love any advice that you have. And then once you get, the admit, then you connect and say like, hey, I'll see you next fall. So, these relationships can go much further. So it's not a waste of time. And even if you networked today with a school that you didn't end up applying to, I think that the information is still relevant as an MBA candidate for most schools. Then you can kind of say like, okay, I do want to be in a culture like this, but maybe this is not the right school because of the career outcomes. So what other schools have a similar vibe? And you can kind of go from there to build your list. And I think it's all helpful.
Yeah, so I think the story is, motivating enough to anybody.
Yeah.
to do the networking. And also, that's also a good point that, when you talk to the school, sometimes, you plan initially that you want to apply to that school, definitely. And when you talk to understand, the culture is not sync with your thoughts or your expectation to the school, and you may end up not applying to that school as well. So, a lot of things can change when you talk to people. Uh, so here we end up this question and question answer section. Jenifer, can you please also put in your Calendly link in the chat box as well, so people can copy paste and or just schedule the call directly.
Yes.
Can you please do that? Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
While you're doing, Jennifer, any last piece of advice, any 2 cents of advice that you can give to the people who have attended this today on networking?
Yeah, so I think that the important part is organizing yourself, right? Like the tracker, it doesn't have to be something so obsessive compulsive, but you want some sort of structure to it. Keep track of this, because when you get in the heat of filling out applications, and sometimes during round one people are applying to 5 to 7 schools, it's easy to start getting things mixed up. But you don't want to call something the wrong name in an application, right? Like some schools say section, some say cohort, some say cluster, some say oh my gosh, MIT has like a totally different thing of like everybody's named after a body of water. Like, so you want to kind of make sure that you're going to have specificity for that specific school, but you also don't want to get it mixed up with another school, because the schools, I mean, like in the top, you know, 25, 1 to 25, those schools are in the same circles on the circuit of recruiting and traveling, hear each other's speeches and things like that. So they know, like if you say cluster, that you're also applying to Columbia. And, like it's like, so how am I your number one school if you're also applying to Columbia? So, just little things like that. You want to keep those details kind of organized so that you're able to be specific for the specific schools and not mix them up.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and that will be helpful to anybody applying that. These trackers are important. I think the trackers are the way that you can, write those specific points that Jennifer has mentioned. That what are the keywords the schools use for the classes or for the clubs, etc.
Mhm.
Uh, so so here we conclude a session, and people who have joined, you can just, if you have more questions or you come up with questions at a later point in time, just get a call done with Jennifer. It's a free counseling session that you can have your profile evaluated, and maybe then you can plan your next steps accordingly. And before I wind up, I want to also tell everyone that a bit about the next session as well. So next coffee chat would be about enhancing your MBA profile. So for the few months that we have before you apply to the fall 27 applications, how you can enhance your profile, how can you find the gaps, and you can improve those gaps and make them a positive point, whether it is low score or whether it is lack of leadership points, or maybe anything, it's volunteering, extracurriculars, anything. So we will be talking all those stuff in our next coffee chat sessions, and we will be sharing this recording. We'll be also sharing link for the next coffee chat session as well, so we would be happy if you join, and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. And then I didn't mention this, sorry, but there are MBA fairs, right? And so this is an easy passive way for you to go get a connection. All of these schools have a CRM system. So they're tracking, what events you go to, what interaction you have with the schools. So if you tell me that like Harvard is my number one choice, but you only registered at the time that you started your application in August, it's interesting. You haven't attended any events to my knowledge, or those types of things. So remember that attending the MBA fairs, virtual or in person, can be greatly beneficial for you. For the most part, they're going to be anonymous. So if you have questions, you can ask them, and you can ask them face to face. And it's not like it's going to go into your file, right? Like it's not like, oh, the AdCom is going to see this when they try to admit me, unless it's something bad, like you were rude or something like that. That's the only time that anything will go into somebody's file or profile. Of a note. So beyond that, like I definitely say like go to those events. I know that like GMAT Club is hosting like an MBA Spotlight in June. It's again a really great opportunity to meet a lot of different schools at one time and make a connection, and then to be able to reference what you learned at the fair, or in talking with an AdCom member or a student or whatever that connection might be. So MBA fairs,
Thanks,
the
Jen.
other thing.
Thank you, Jen. As I said, this topic is close to your heart. You have so much to tell and so much to talk about on this, and it's really helpful. Uh, we have some amazing thank you messages as well from Radhika and Zenith. And sorry, Jen, if you can help, we have one last question from Dylan. And Dylan, if you have more questions, you can also schedule a call with Jen, but we would want to take it up this. So, quick question: if we still have time, should we be following up with AdComs after info sessions?
I don't think that there's a need unless you have a very specific question that didn't get answered during the chat, but just to follow up, that's not necessarily necessary for the AdCom. If it's a student, different story. I really appreciated getting to hear your perspective today and learning more about this club or this career path, and would love to be able to reach out to you and ask more questions as I start to work on my application. Very easy, passive, something you can copy and paste and put into your spreadsheet and then use it for later on and be like, oh, look, I can just copy and paste this and send this along. But yeah, I no need to follow up with the AdCom unless there's something very specific that you wanted.
All right. Thank you so much. And yes, make those notes. We see you in the next copy section of the profile enhance, how to enhance your profile for the MBA applications. And that's it. Bye for now.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Priyanka.
Yeah.